Sports for Champions, inspiring the children of today to become the champions of tomorrow. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Sports for Champions podcast. Today I'm joined by discus thrower James Tomlinson. How are you today, James?
I'm absolutely great, thank you for having me. It's brilliant to be down here.
More than welcome. So I know that you had a bit of a meteoric rise in your younger days and it came out of nowhere almost, your sporting career. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
It's quite an unorthodox way. Usually maybe it's a parent or a sibling who did the sport and you go into it. For me, I was the typical big guy in PE. My PE teacher sort of went, "Oh, here's a discus, you're doing that for county champs." So I did do that, but me being me and having won every single sports day in primary school, I thought, I've got to win this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I've got to win this. So me and Dad went down to the local beach, which is full of pebbles, and we started just hunting for stones that resembled a discus.
Wow.
So we started training by throwing pebbles. Luckily, that training did pay off, and I won county championships, and Dad saw some sort of talent there maybe, and bought me my first discus.
Wow.
And from there then it sort of went mental. So I won county championships and I've won it ever since. I've sort of been winging it ever since.
That's amazing. Wow. So do you remember that sort of transition into actually training with a discus and what that felt like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you first start doing discus, you just do your traditional standing throw, and that's what I knew. And suddenly a coach came along and was trying to make me do rotation, which you might see on TV, and it was playing in my head. I was like, no, I just want to do standing throw. And soon realised that if I wanted to make something in the sport, I'd have to do it the right way. And that was a huge mental challenge. And to be honest with you, I'm 10, 13 years down the line and we're still working that out. That's how technical this sport can be.
Yeah, see, because obviously you're a very big guy. How tall are you?
I'm 6'6".
6'6", right. So you've got the arch and you've got like the trajectory just from the launch from your arm. Can you tell us a little bit about the technique and about what you've worked on specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I touched on, you start with the standing throw, which is very basic, but with the full rotation, you start at the back of a circle. You sort of do one rotation into the middle, followed by your left or right leg throw, depending on what hand you are.
Yeah.
And it looks like a spin. People call it the spin technique. It's a bit more complicated than that. But over the years, you're working on things down to the amount of weight you have on your left leg, the angle of your body on release, the angle of your hand, where your thumb is, how you're holding the discus. There really isn't like 5 key points I could pull out. There are literally hundreds of little things you have to do within 1.8 or 9 seconds. That's how long it takes from the start to the end of a discus throw.
Yeah.
If you had to think about it, it's mind-boggling. So this is why we train, so it becomes sort of muscle memory, if you like, and you don't have to think about it. But people don't start working on that technique their whole career.
Is that something that's developed over the years? I know obviously you're quite a young athlete yourself, but in the history of the sport, has it changed quite a lot in terms of people's technique?
Yeah, massively. So the modern discus throw, as you would see on TV today, that's only really been around since, don't quote me on this, but I want to say around the 40s or 50s, and that wasn't perfected properly until maybe even the 80s,
right,
when the world record was set by Jürgen Schultz in 1984. But before that, in the 20s, and of course, discus goes back 2,000 years to the Greek times on the battlefield.
Wow.
It's changed massively since then. So it's only the last 60, 70 years where it's really become solid and recognises what the technique is.
So you said the world record there. Is that still the world record?
It's still the world record. It's the longest standing track and field world record.
I was going to say it must be, because they're broken like sort of almost like every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
get records being broken. But for that to stand so long, do you know why it's lasted so long?
Maybe I'm not too sure really. People have got very close to it. So you've got people like Vilas Alekna or Gerd Kanter who have thrown high 73 metres, but no one's managed to break that 74.06 since April 1984, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And it also makes every athlete, it's sort of like a barrier. It's kind of like the 4-minute mile, because nobody's broken 74 since 1984. Crazy.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow. So obviously when you started out throwing pebbles, and then presumably you weren't, when you did finally get onto the discus, you're not throwing the same discus that you are now.
No.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So in most those events, in men anyway, you start off maybe age 13 with discus throwing with the 1 kilo discus. Now I wasn't really around for that, so I came into the sport when I was 14, which is under 15s I want to say. which is the 1.25 kilo discus. That progresses when you're a year or two older to the 1.5 kilo,
Yeah.
then the 1.75 kilo, and then finally the 2 kilo, which is what the senior men throw at the Olympics, Commonwealths, and Europeans, etc.
Yeah. And then what's the difference in that throw? Because I imagine that the heavier it is, the further you can throw it, because you can get that bit more purchase.
To an extent, it depends, because although it's only 250 gram increments, it can make a difference of about 7 meters per 250 grams.
Wow.
Well, that's what I found personally,
Yeah.
which is incredible. It's 250 grams, that's nothing. But when you're putting that on a lever and accelerating that to close to 40 miles an hour maybe, that is a huge difference. So as the weight gets on, your distance tends to decrease unless your physical and technical improvements coincide with that.
I see. So you're actually able to throw the lighter ones further. It's not a case of, because obviously
Yeah.
if you had a paper discus that weighed next to nothing,
Absolutely.
it's not going to go
Absolutely.
very far.
We go into some schools and they've got these foam discuses, and I'm like, oh yeah, go on, I'll have a bit of a throw. Let's see what I can do here. And it's going 20 meters.
Yeah.
But then I put the 2 kilo in my hand, and it will go a lot further. So there is a sweet spot maybe.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Can't be too light.
Cool. So from there, you've had a fantastic youth career, achieving Welsh records, British records. Can you tell us a few of the highlights from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's 2 key achievements that spring to mind. So back in 2017, I was fortunate enough to go to the Youth Commonwealth Games all the way in the Bahamas, and I achieved a silver medal there with a throw of over 60 meters. And then earlier in that year, I think again around April time, I broke the under-18 British record, which still stands today. Thank God. Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, and that's at 63 meters 48.
So how old were you then?
I was 17.
So you're 17, and then, I mean, obviously to the layman, that doesn't seem too far off what you're saying is the unbeatable world record. I mean,
Absolutely.
how fine are the margins at the top?
Well, you have to remember, when I threw 63.48, that was with the slightly lighter discus.
Of course, yeah.
But again, yeah, although even at a senior weight, so say I threw 63 meters with a 2 kilo, the difference between 63 and 73 is chalk and cheese. It's huge. There are so many little changes or alterations you can make to get that distance. 1 meter in discus is a big gain.
Wow, brilliant. And then I believe that you went to your first Youth Commonwealth Games in 2019, was that?
Junior.
Junior.
Junior European Championships.
That's it, sorry, yeah. And how did you get on there?
Yeah, fantastic. So a couple of years prior to that, I went to the European Youth Championships in 2016.
I think that's what I meant.
Yeah, absolutely, yes, I have no problem at all. In 2016. And that was my first exposure to the real world in athletics. I was like mixing with people from all sorts of backgrounds in different countries, and coming from the UK, I was like a 16, maybe 6'3", 6'4". I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I was walking in, shoulders back, and then I'm meeting some guys in different countries, and then slowly I'm realising that I'm really small fish.
Yeah,
so it was eye opening. But the year after, like 2017, I was motivated by that 2016 exposure, and I just managed to swim with the big fish in that age group.
How do you feel you deal with the pressure of a big tournament like that?
I love it. I absolutely love it. So some people may crumble, but I guess those people don't necessarily make it all the way. You have to feed off it. Of course we can be nervous, but it's what you do with those nerves. So I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I don't get a little bit shaky or sweaty. I mean, that might have something to do with the caffeine that's flowing through my veins.
Maybe.
But I sort of use that excitement to get rid of any tiredness or any anxiety. I just feed on it and just bottle it up and wait till I get in the circle and just release it. That's why I thought you hear a lot of throwers scream and roar. It's like almost a little bit of a release, really.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Obviously, it can go either way, and everybody's different. Some people deal with pressure really well, like you, and they thrive off it, whereas other people really struggle against it and actually struggle to put their best performances down when the pressure's there. What do you think it is about you that makes you really enjoy it and thrive on it as you do?
I think a little bit of me, if I'm honest. Like most sports people, I enjoy the attention. I enjoy kind of being... Especially in discus throwing, you're kind of on your own stage in that cage. I like people watching. I like the reaction of people when I throw far. I love that. I thrive off that. It's kind of what makes me want to do what I do. It's the same for a boxer. Like, you have to love it. You have to love the attention. Otherwise, you're not going to make it in that sport. But for me, it's part and parcel. Half loving the attention and half wanting to do something. I kind of always wanted to be a little bit more than what I might have been in school. I've always wanted to sort of achieve higher or achieve something that I thought might be impossible and then go ahead and achieve it. And it's been nice to tick off these goals that I've been putting through all these years, ticking them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of like a satisfaction of achieving something you set out and being a little attention seeker as an athlete.
It's probably a good concoction, to be fair. It's stood you well so far, I'd say. And then I know that you've struggled with injury throughout your career. I would say you were in the gym sort of from 14, 15.
14, yeah, absolutely.
Putting a lot of pressure on different muscle groupings that a lot of people probably wouldn't in that developmental stage. Can you tell us a little bit about your injury troubles?
Yeah, of course. So when I was 15 years old, again, maybe being a bit of Jack the Lad, and I was unsupervised in the gym. I was with a friend. I think the story goes that there was a boy in a nearby town called Haverfordwest who would squat at 150 kilos at 15.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, I could do that. So he threw the plates on. And to prove a point, I squatted it down and I jumped with the weight with 150 kilo on my back just to prove that I was stronger. Maybe I was, but I also wasn't, because when I came back down, I compressed 2 discs in my spine. And then having that initial injury and then throwing on it, it just compressed those discs.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I had to deal with that for years after, really.
Yeah, and then obviously that's a part of the body that is under a lot of stress while you're doing your throws. Is that something that you had to accommodate, or did you change your training or something while you were recovering?
Yeah, of course. So I was so fortunate to be introduced to a physio called Dr. Lee Bashiran. And she basically took me through a consultation. She was pressing on my stomach and she was like, James, where is your core? And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't really do any core work. So that was the first thing. So I had to build a core from the age of 15 because I just didn't have one. And it was from that then, over the years, I've had to just manage being strong here, strong in the centre. And that in itself creates that support my back needed. And I haven't really suffered since.
That's brilliant. Wow.
Yeah.
So then moving on through your career, I know that you then went on to the Commonwealth Youth Championships.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Commonwealth Youth Championships, that was awesome. That was over in the Bahamas. We were on a hotel on the beach for 2 weeks.
Not
and
bad.
The sun was out and I saw my first stingray. I went swimming and I saw these little dory fish.
That's
I was like,
awesome.
oh, this is amazing. But it was my first international major championships. It wasn't just European, it was the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
It was maybe 60 70 countries all in one place. And again, that was a big challenge because I had read about my competitors online, and to finally put a face to the name was really weird because I had a big competitor from New Zealand at the time called Connor Bell. He's a great guy, and it was my first time going head to head to him. So we'd had very similar seasons up until that point.
Right.
And it was kind of who's better on the day, and he won the gold medal, which I'm fine about. I think it's fine, but again, it was a new level of exposure at that young age. So you go into Europeans, that was one thing. Go to Commonwealth, that was again more exposure, more countries, more backgrounds, and being so far away from home at a young age in a completely alien environment. Although it was nice, it was still alien. You know, my parents went out there. It was just me with the team. But again, I thrived on it.
Yeah,
I thrived on that pressure.
Brilliant. And then you achieved silver, obviously.
I achieved silver, yeah, absolutely.
You're not too far behind him.
Not too far.
And then in terms of the future, is there anything in particular that you're setting your sights on?
Oh, absolutely. I have to get the rings. So I've got a tattoo to remember my mum here. So I thought to honour that, I'd have the Olympic rings on the other arm. So when I'm in that discus that pose at the start, you've got the rings there, and then remembering my mum there. So it's to be an Olympian, to be a European competitor, Commonwealth competitor, but not only that, I want to be a medalist. I want to bring some medals back to the UK. So Lawrence Okoye, he won silver at the most recent Commonwealth Games, and that's awesome. That's the first medal I think Britain have had in discus on that sort of stage. I want to say ever.
Wow.
But he's just started to move it that way. I want to continue that. I want to start bringing some gold medals in, and that's not taken away from what Lawrence has done because he's the first to do it. Incredible. But I'd love just to bring discus throwing or throws events anyway into that public eye, like Mo Farah did with 10,000 metres or Jess Ennis did with heptathlon. I just like to do that personality in the throws events and bring it to the forefront and have little school kids, not just aspiring to be footballers or rugby players, which again is absolutely fine and great, but I want them to have the option to do a sport that I have found so much love for, and it's opened the world up to me, really. And I just want to create the opportunity for little kids today. So
I think they'd be daft to bet against you, definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I know that you have had some challenges throughout your career.
Yeah.
You've had challenges with mental health. I'm wondering if you want to maybe speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. We can touch on that. So I've suffered with my mental health from the age of 18. I didn't really know what it was until I looked back, but it was kind of it's hard to describe the feeling, but nevertheless, I suffered with it. And in 2021, I lost my mum to cancer after a short battle, and that really, to use an analogy, is like that. My mental health was already a bonfire. When I lost my mum, I was like pouring petrol all over it, and it really ignited it. And I didn't know how to handle it, and made some ill choices maybe, and almost fell off from sport completely. But you hear about people saying you need to talk, you need to reach out, and when you're in that hole, you kind of just know that's not right. It's like, no, I don't need to talk to anybody, I'm fine, I can bottle it up, I can deal with this. But it took 6 or 7 months to finally go, I need help. And I called several counsellors, and I'll be honest, the first couple weren't great, and it didn't help. And I thought, it took me 6 months to pick up the phone, and you expect it to be the fix. You think, okay, finally I'm going to call this number and it's going to fix me. It doesn't work like that. I had to try different counsellors, different methods, etc. But finally, I came across Macmillan Grief Support, and at the time, most of my mental health problems were coming from grief. I didn't know that, didn't know how to handle it. But I gave him a call off the advice from my dad, and that was the single best thing I could have done, because I was finally able to vent, not only about the problems with mum, but about everything. I was able to really let go, because I'm a big guy. I feel like I can't really turn my inner anger into physical anger, because that's just not going to be constructive. I just bottled everything, and that really ate away at me. But after finally finding the right help, my life just got better. I said to you earlier, I was, earlier in the year, I was almost 140 kilograms in body weight, and that wasn't useful weight. And now I'm sat here at 120 kilos. So my life has slowly taken the right way, but it's not a one call fix. You have to keep trying, and you have to want to be helped. That's the important thing. It doesn't go away on its own.
It's such an important message, and no doubt there'll be people at home watching who'll be going through similar battles. And I think the important thing is just that they see people like yourself, like some of the other athletes who've come out recently. There's Paddy Pimblett, who mentioned a few others earlier on, who've come out and basically now propagating this message, and it's becoming more acceptable for men to talk about these things, and especially with such a big guy like yourself. Is that something that you'd seen before, or is there just not really many examples growing up of people in that situation?
I think we're living in the age where mental health's coming to the forefront. For me personally, there was one particular documentary where I because I felt silly suffering from mental health. Because as you said, you think, big guy, I've got all these sporting things. I thought, why can I suffer from it? What, it doesn't really happen to you, does it? And then I saw one documentary, I think it's called Big Boys Don't Cry, and it's by Joe Marler. I'm not the biggest rugby fan in the world, but I really confided in that. Seeing somebody at the top of their game, who had made many mistakes in their career, finally come clean on why he made the decisions he did, was because he was suffering from mental health. And because I saw Joe suffering from it, I thought, oh right, yeah, maybe it is fairly normal in sports people. Maybe it is a normal thing, and it is normal. It's so normal. Taking medication for your head is no different than taking medication for an illness, and that's what he says in the documentary. He uses the analogy because he was reluctant to go onto medication. The doctor said to him, he said, if you were ill, Joe, you'd take antibiotics, wouldn't you? Well, see these medication as antibiotics for your head. There is no difference. I don't know why the stigma is there, but it is there. And maybe that won't go away for a while, but it's important to understand that suffering from mental health and seeking help, whether that's medicine or speaking or some sort of therapy, it's no different to rehabbing a body part or an illness or an injury. It's the same.
Yeah. I think we are on the road to people being more open about these kind of things. And I think stories like yours and some of the other ones that have come to light recently in the media should really help push that on. So thank you for sharing that with us today. It's a really important message, and I'm glad that you're on the road to recovery.
Thank you very much.
Brilliant. So if we could take it back to your sport, you've mentioned quite a few discus throwers who have achieved some great throws. Is there anyone in particular that you look up to?
Yeah, definitely. There's an Estonian called Gerd Kanter, and I think many discus throwers would choose him as the example. So I use him as like my technical model. That's somebody I like to replicate their throw because we're very similar heights, very similar arm spans, body weight, etc. And he's a fantastic thrower. But the one thing that made me really warm to him was that in 2007, the Osaka World Championships, I think it was, he finally beat a guy called Vila Selekna. He's the second best of all time, and I think it was something like 100 competitions he'd lost to him to.
Wow.
And it was this one competition in Osaka where he finally beat him. He threw 69 meters something. But it was his reaction, it was his humility, it was how he was a human, because he threw it, and this is a 6'6", 130 kilo lean bloke, and he screamed like a little girl.
Wow.
He just lost it. He was screaming, and I love that because he was sort of like this stereotypical Eastern European athlete, and he was human. I was like, I really like him. So I use him as not my technical and sort of role model in the sport. But in terms of performance, my role model's Robert Harting, a German. He's famous for ripping his vest off in 2012 and then going and doing 110 hurdles.
Wow.
It's crazy. So he's sort of like my sporting personality role model, but my my discus role model, just the throwing, is Gerd Kanter.
That's amazing. And then in terms of wider sport, is there anybody that you kind of really focus on in terms of looking up to?
Absolutely. The beast Eddie Hall. I think so. I didn't really have an interest in strongman. Of course, I watched it every Christmas because I love lifting weights. I thought that was cool. And when Eddie Hall came around, he brought a personality to strongman, and he never took no for an answer. So Eddie also suffered with his mental health, and he's not had a perfect life. He was unfunded, and he just carried on. He wanted to be the world's strongest man, and he did that by any means, and it damn right almost killed him. But he did it. And he's got one particular quote which I absolutely love, which reads something along the lines of, "Don't tell me I can't do something, because I'll prove you wrong every single time." And I like that because I've been maybe written off a few times, and at the time, fairly rightly so. It's how you come through it. But I know what my goals are specifically, and I will do everything to achieve those, no matter what anyone says. And that's just how it is. And Eddie did it, so it can be done.
Exactly. Yeah, you need somebody sometimes to kick in that door for you then to walk through, and then hopefully you can open a few for others along the way.
Yeah, of course.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a great note to end it on. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Brilliant.
No, you're more than welcome, and I hope you all enjoyed that at home. Make sure you give us a like, a subscribe, and check it out next time for some more Sports for Champions fun. See ya. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed the podcast. If you did, be sure to leave us a like and a subscribe, and check out all our other videos for some more great interviews and content. Bye.